The Exide Challenger was manned by 57-year-old Tony Bullimore. He was in the leading group when the weather started to turn.
It wasn't too bad. It was blowing 40, 45 knots. In normal terms, 40, 45 knots is a lot of wind. But in the Southern Ocean, 40, 45 knots is not a lot of wind. Then the little bit of magic, all of a sudden it's kicking over 50 knots. Then at that point, I've got to decide on a direction the boat's going to go in for survival now. It's not so much looking at the race; it's really looking after the boat, you know, and the yacht. And I'm looking after the yacht, and the yacht will look after me, you know. And so I hand steered the yacht for about 8 to 10 hours. The waves were running up to 30, 40 feet, 50 feet, you know, and then you get the odd big one, really big one. One of the frightening situations is where you're on the helm and you're sort of running down these big seas, you know, with the wind behind you, and you look in front of you and you think it's an iceberg. You see this enormous mountain, and you think,
how high?
Look, yeah, it could be up to 60, 70, 80 foot high, and you can't believe it. I mean, apart from the wave breaking forward, you get a split wave, you know, where it's breaking backwards as well, and it's like a tumultuous mountain of water. You know, it's really quite incredible. I mean, the power behind some of those waves, I mean, you're talking about several double-decker buses, you know, chucked in together. I spent about 2 hours balancing the yacht until she would steer with the automatic pilot that I've got on the yacht. I felt pretty sure I'd got it right. Then I went below, closed up the hatch.
So you went into the boat?
Yes. And I'm sitting there, you know, with a mug of tea, in fact, and with a couple, I won't tell you what the biscuits were, but, you know, sort of dunking a couple of biscuits, feeling pretty pleased with myself, got the boat under control. And I felt really quite fantastic, and there's a wholesome feeling about the whole thing. Here you are, you know, in this boat, and you're in the Southern Ocean, and the Southern Ocean's chucking one of its big ones at you, and you're respecting it, you know, and you're sort of looking out at it, and you feel that it knows that you're respecting it, you know, you're doing it all right, and it's one of those feelings which. You've got to be there. You've got to be able to take the feeling, understand the feeling, and you've got it. You know, and it was beautiful. It's difficult to explain, but it was super. You know, it was really exactly what I wanted. And unfortunately, there was a snap, and the snap was like a match. If we were sitting in this room in silence, and you or I snapped a match, it would go crack. You know, and you can just about hear the crack. But it was much louder. But it was that kind of match, you know, breaking a match. It went snap. I couldn't believe it, you know.
Did you know what it was?
No, but within seconds, literally within 2 or 3 seconds, I've been in situations before, you know, where I've had problems. But the yacht turned over literally within a few seconds, 3, 4, 5 seconds. The yacht was upside down. I mean, it was as quick as that. I've been in yachts that have capsized, that have actually taken time, and you know, you can actually walk through what's happening and say, we're going over, you know. But this wasn't. This was snap, and pss, like that. And I didn't hurt myself. I didn't get hurt, you know, I didn't get injured when this happened. But instead of sitting on my little seat, you know, by my galley, the amazing thing was I was standing all of a sudden on the roof, inside on the roof of the yacht, which in the roof was now the bottom of the hull, and I've got these very big viewing windows, and I'm looking down into the sea. I remember looking around for my mug of tea, but that was a bit ridiculous because obviously that had been chucked all over the place.
Was it dark?
It was in the evening. It was dark, yes.
Could you see anything?
At that time, the lights in the cabin, I had a couple of little lights, were still on. And then as water, what happened was inside the yacht at that time, it was still fairly dry. Then when I looked down into the windows, you know, I noticed the boom from the foremast was slamming up against one of the windows. because it was now loose, but it was hanging in there because the ropes was holding it in place, and it was sort of banging, bang, bang. Within about half an hour, it smashed the window, and the water came into the boat like the Niagara Falls upside down, you know. I mean, it just... I couldn't believe it. You know, one minute I'm standing there dry trying to work out the logistics of how to survive, how to get it all together, and the next minute I'm standing there up to here in below freezing water. I mean, it was hilarious, you know, if you could imagine.
It was hilarious?
Oh, well, not really, but it was pretty awful, you know. It was a shock. Because at that time, all the electrics went down, so I went into darkness.
How cold was it?
It was bitterly cold. It was bitterly cold. It was around freezing.
Were you wearing your survival suit?
No. At that time, I had my oilers on, my normal oilers and boots and sort of thermal vest, that kind of thing. And I didn't bother with it, in fact, with a survival suit for a couple of hours. I mean, I was trying to work out, quite frankly, how to sort of get things under control. Once the window went, I mean, it was, you know, that really put me into a different league of problems.
How did that first night pass?
I think I got into a little bit of sort of meditation, you know, sort of thinking about the whole situation. And I probably said to myself, I don't believe that the keel's snapped off, you know, a couple of dozen times, you know, but it had. I was shocked. But I'm a pretty steady guy, you know. I've got a, you know, I don't panic.
But you're standing in freezing water for an entire night.
That's right.
This is one of the most difficult rescues ever attempted by Australia's maritime authorities. The long-range Orion aircraft had to fly so far to reach the yachtsman, it only had 3 hours searching time over the scene. First, the crew spotted the French sailor Thierry Dubois and his upturned boat. They threw a life raft down. There's no rescue vessel nearby. There's a 20-foot swell, the water is close to freezing, and it's now dark. So it'll be tomorrow before the search can resume for Tony Bullimore.
I had to open the companionway entrance, which is, it's an oval door, which is it's a bit like a submarine door. You know, you've got a sort of big handle, you open the handle and push it out. And I pushed it out, and then I had to sort of duck down to have a look out into the cockpit. And then again, it's really getting freezing now. And all of a sudden, the door started to close with the pressure. And I'm trying to get my hand back in, and I wanted to shut the door with me on the inside, and my little finger got caught in the door, right on the latch. And I saw it sort of squeeze, and I saw the end of my finger drop off. And it didn't actually hurt, you know, my hands were that cold that it was, and it never hurt. It never hurt at all on the yacht, you know.
You saw the tip of your finger come apart?
That's right. You could see the seas that were inside the hull, you know, smashing up against one side and then rolling and churning up and then rolling to the other side of the yacht. I mean, it was like the inside of a washing machine when you're using it.
Just the water turning round?
Churning and turning around. I mean, it was quite incredible. It was quite frightening. Once the hole came in the bottom of the boat, which was now the bottom of the boat, the window collapsed. It created a kind of a suction situation. Everything in the boat started to get sucked out through this hole. I mean, it was unbelievable. Food, charts, sextant, you know, binoculars. And
this
then
is within the first few hours?
Oh, yes. I mean, it was unbelievable. It just kept ripping things out. Food in plastic boxes that was lashed down. Once the lashings got loose, you know, the boxes just flew out. I got myself some bit of food together at that time. Little, it wasn't much, but the little bit that I had there.
What was left?
Well, what was left, you know, which was, I found one tin of beans, you know, the tin of beans, which I managed to get open with my knife. I found a little water in little bottles, you know, plastic bottles, which was great at the time, you know.
And you're doing this standing in freezing water?
That's right. Then the most important thing was that I had to find somewhere inside the yacht where I could get up and get out of the water, because it was absolutely apparent that if I stayed in the water, I was gone, you know.
You were going to die?
I was going to die. I went deeper into the yacht, you know, and went past what we call the engine room and into a little cuddy. And there was a little shelf up high, and I put some netting up by the side of it and made it into a kind of little den, or a little bolt hole, if you like, and provided I could just about get up and dangle from it, my body was out of the water.
So you created a hammock, effectively?
It was a little kind of hammock which was up very high, and it was just floating above the water, and I could get up in there and I could be out, and it was amazing because after 2 or 3 hours my body started to feel warmer.
When the aircraft flew over Tony Bullimore's yacht, the mast and keel were gone and there was no sign of him. Yet within the last 2 hours came news that rescuers say makes them sure he's still alive.
Beacon's been activated now in an alarm mode, which immediately suggests that there's someone there who's swapped the switch, probably as an indication that, hey, I'm here and don't write me off, sort of thing.
A frigate with a helicopter on board is now sailing at full speed towards the stranded yachts. It won't reach them for another 2 days.
I don't really know how effective it was, but when I've got my beacon, I'm turning my beacon on and off.
You were just pressing it on and off?
On and off, to create a different signal, and the aim and objective was that that people listening to the signal will say, well, that signal can't change in that illogical, logical, whichever way, without the assistance of somebody.
It must have been operated manually.
Yes, that's right.
But of course, at this stage, you didn't know that that was being picked up.
This was the big problem. I didn't know what was going on outside, and outside didn't know what was going on inside, if you like. I was watching the water level, you know, obviously of the seawater that was inside the hull, and there was a time on day one when in the main cabin, which we call, according to what time of the day it is, the doghouse or the control centre, when one of the windows caved in and it filled up with water, that was always pretty deep. And then in what we call the engine room, that was fairly shallow. And in the little tiny cuddy that I sort of climbed up onto a shelf in, that was dry. By day two, the let's say the control centre stroke doghouse had more water in, and then the engine room was now starting to fill, and in the little cuddy, water had got into there now. So now I had to create sort of water lines around the yacht, not with pencils or chalk, just looking at shelves and things. And then I'm looking at it sort of 6 hours later and noticing that it's about 2 or 3 inches higher. I mean, this was really... And the funny thing was, I noticed that it went down at one point, and I thought, you know, what's happening? And I think that was simply because of the motion of the sea outside, and sometimes more water was being pumped in. And obviously, the more water that got into the yacht, there was less space for oxygen. And eventually you get to a situation where maybe you'd have 80, 85, 90% of the area where I was full of water, and 10, 15% would be for air, oxygen. And when you get to that stage, I mean, I've got to sort of hold my head up to a little, you know, a little area which is high up, and the whole thing becomes very difficult then.
Were you beginning to think now that perhaps you were not going to survive?
That's correct.
Did you feel that your body was perhaps giving up?
The only part of my body, funny thing was that I got cut up badly, you know, my finger and different things. The cold was keeping out the pain. So I was saying to myself, well, at least I haven't got my little finger thumping like hell, you know, with it being chopped badly. I mean, it's determination. I mean, I felt that I had problems, but quite frankly, if you're determined enough and you've made up your mind that you're not going to give in easy and that you're going to go the whole hog, it's quite simple that you carry on.
But some people faced with all of the problems that you'd had for 4 days, that would have undermined their determination. What did it do to your determination?
Well, I think the first thing is that my determination stayed at the kind of level that it was on, which was very determined, you know. And when I looked at, like I keep using the word logistics and reasoning through the situation, there was still a couple of opportunities, and however thin and however small the opportunities were, it was a case of fighting and hanging on. And it would have been very easy, and it's happened sadly so many times before, to sort of roll over and go to sleep and say I've had enough, or not even have time to say anything or think anything. But there was no question, and there was absolutely no chance of me sort of rolling over and going to sleep. I mean, I was there, and I'd worked out all the opportunities that were possible. There was still a couple of opportunities. I mean, one of my opportunities, in fact, was to take to the life raft and hopefully drift to Antarctica, you know, with a fishing line that I'd made up.
So you actually thought about floating to Antarctica?
Yeah, it was a bit absurd, you know, because it gets very cold. You've got the storms, you've got the vastness of the Southern Ocean.
Did you ever regret embarking on the voyage in the first place?
Never.
After a day of frustration and dwindling hope, the first glimmer of a chance tonight. Sonar equipment dropped next to Tony Bullimore's boat has picked up a tapping sound from inside the upturned hull. It could just be wreckage hitting the boat, but rescuers are hopeful it is the Briton.
The Navy dropped some sonar buoys around the hull, and they believe that they could hear some tapping. Was that you?
No, I didn't know anything about the sonar buoys being dropped.
So it wasn't you tapping?
No, it wasn't.
Because they assumed that it was you tapping?
Yes, yeah, no. I was beginning to feel that I might have reached the end of the line. It was really simply a case of me looking at the logistics of the situation and sort of filinizing my mind and indexing, you know, what I was going to think for the next, you know, for the next few hours. I want to allocate so much time for my wife, family. I want to allocate so much time to other aspects of my life, and I actually blocked off and prepared myself for, you know, for the final moment.
So you started dividing your thoughts?
That's right.
Reflecting on particular areas of your life?
That's right.
Did you seriously consider the possibility of dying?
Yes, very much so.
Did you pray?
I think I said a few words now and then.
The search is now going on with night cameras. By midnight tonight, the rescue vessel should be there. Thierry Dubois will be picked up first. Divers have said if Tony Bullimore is not in his yacht and his life raft is, the rescue will be called off.
Are you aware that a ship was approaching?
No.
No idea?
No idea. No idea at all.
So what was your very first indication?
I heard a kind of and it sounded typically like a propelled plane, not a jet, a propelled plane flying over. For me at that time to sort of swim out into the open sea, hoping that you know, that there's something about was out of the question. I needed more positive proof, you know, more to be absolutely sure.
But you must have felt tempted to swim out.
I did. I thought, I'll tie the rope round me, get out, and then the boat's lurching all over the place. I mean, it's really, really, really bad. And I thought, well, a plane won't be able to rescue me anyway. All it can do is observe, you know, and pinpoint where I am and that kind of thing, and then other people have got to come. And then a few hours after that, I heard the same old hum again, you know, the planes. And then I heard the a sort of the old chanting of the prop of a helicopter.
He believes that if the survivor has battened himself down inside the living compartment, that he may well be in there and will be trapped in there. And given the water pressure on the bulkheads immediately after him, he will not be able to get out. Which means that if he's in there, we're going to have to cut through the hole.
How am I set? 420.
Roger, so we have the yacht and the spy mission.
Got my ear hard up against the hull, trying to cope with what's outside, and
You can't see anything.
can't see anything. No, it's dark, you know, pitch dark now. And then I heard this sort of irregular, sort of heavy banging.
What was it like?
Well, at first it was bang, 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 that kind of thing. And the person that was doing it, he actually put a little tune to it. You know, I mean, I think I've got the tune somewhere. And I'm actually hitting the side of the hull with my fist, and that wasn't doing much good to my fist or making much noise. So I used the distress beacon, the one that I've been saving as my sort of last hope. I'm in here, I'm on my way out. And then...
You were shouting?
As loud as I could shout. It was my opportunity. I've been waiting for it. And it was the door, the gate, you know, it was the window. It opened a little bit, and it was up to me to get through it. No hanging about.
What were you thinking at that moment?
I was ecstatic, but not really totally ecstatic. But
You couldn't see anybody.
Couldn't see anybody, but I heard a voice, and I wasn't imagining it. I heard one person shout to another person and shout back again, and that's when I said, I'm on my way out.
Did you have a surge of adrenaline that pushed you out?
That's right. It sort of immediately there was a wind up there. You know, it was as if someone had just put a very powerful battery and plugged it into me. You know, it's junk. You know, you really felt that you wanted to go all over again, and it took me just seconds to get to the other end of the yacht and seconds to dive out of the yacht and up, and there was the Adelaide. And I looked round at the yacht, and I could just see the head of one of the divers who was in a rib, you know, on the other side of the yacht, and he was sort of peering up because he realised something was happening, and I've shouted that I'm over this side, and then they brought the rib around the yacht to where I was.
Got him? He's alive. He's getting out of the boat. He's there. That's him. I got him. That's him.
And the diver come over, and I felt his, you know, strong arm go round my shoulder, and he just said, relax, of which I did. And within seconds, I was at the side of the rib, and there was, you know, several very strong hands grabbing hold of my survival suit, you know, and again within seconds, I was laid out, you know, in the flooring of the rib. That's like the big rubber dinghy. And someone chucked, I think had a spare jacket, and chucked one under my head as a little pillar, and said, "You're all right, mate."
Guys, we just had some great news. Mr. Bullimore has been found in the hull of the yacht and he's alive. Should be okay. They'll get him on Adelaide pretty soon. Yeah, and the wily old fox has disappeared in.
But when I got into the rib and I'm laying down, I mean, there was this big, one particular big guy with a beard that had done the thumping, and he's sort of looking over me, and I mean, they were terrific guys. I mean, the Australians, I mean, believe me, I mean, they're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people, and I'm very emotional over that, obviously. He was looking after me like a baby. He was sort of talking, you know, and everything was great. And I gave him a kiss, you know, on his big beard. I had 1 or 2 little teardrops come down and that kind of thing. I heard one of the other Aussie, you know, seamen tell and say, "Oh yeah, your wife's going to love that, isn't she? She's found out what you like," you know. And that was one of the jokes on the ship all the way back to Perth, you know, as you can imagine.
You kissed the diver.
That's right. But it was great.
You've survived this ordeal, but you've got some injuries. What are your injuries?
Well, I think yeah, I've got 1 or 2 dents in the mind, you know, but apart from that, I suppose I've lost half of my little finger on my left hand. That's had to be chopped off and cleaned up by the surgeons in Perth. My feet and legs, I'm still having treatment for frostbite, and they're pretty grim at the moment. I've got some frostbite at the end of this finger. I've got quite a few cuts and bruises, but I think probably within a month, apart from the little bits that's dropped off, I'll be back to normal.
Just lay down. You lay down.
I felt very humble. And there's no way I could look at it in any, you know, in any kind of, oh, well, it happens, so what type of thing, you know, let's get on with life. I think it will always play a part in my life.
But what draws you into such a dangerous, potentially dangerous event like this?
Well, I suppose it's the type of person I am. I mean, you know, the world is made up of sort of millions of people, and probably millions of those millions of people are pretty, you know, pretty ordinary people that get on with making the world tick, you know, and keeping the world going. And amongst all those millions of people along this earth, there's a few people like me that sort of enjoy getting out there and doing something they've never done before, taking on big challenges where there's risk and there's danger, and sort of going for it where you know, where it's never been done before. I mean, that's it. That's the type of person I am.
But some might argue that people like you are reckless.
Oh, maybe there is a little bit of recklessness about it, but and I suppose the recklessness could be bordering on people that I leave behind, my wife, family, you know, friends, and other people that may get hurt if anything happened to me. But I try to cover most contingencies, and I can't alter the way I am.
Would you do it again?
Absolutely, and hopefully next time I win the race.
Do you regard yourself as heroic?
No, I think I felt sort of, I'm Tony Bullimore, I'm who I am. I think the real heroes of, you know, what's happened is really is the Royal Australian Air Force and the Royal Australian Navy and the Royal Australian Army and the other people that put themselves together and got themselves down into the Southern Ocean to get hold of me and bring me back.
So if you're not a hero, you're lucky?
I'd be happier to call myself lucky than a hero.
There's another chance to see that interview tomorrow night at 11:50 here on BBC One.